What's up everybody, and welcome back to the channel and to another Outriders video. A couple of months back I tried my hand at a Triple Turret Techno and I kind of left the build there. I wasn't too impressed by it, but a lot of stuff has happened since then, including Borealis being fixed and basically all the changes that came with the New Horizon patch. So I thought it's time to revisit it. Plus, I also realized that I've never really recorded a build or a video that was good at beating Eye of the Storm solo, or for that matter capable of beating Eye of the Storm solo. So that's what you're also going to see in this build. But as usual, if you find this useful or enjoy the video at all, please do consider giving it a like, subbing to the channel, maybe sharing the video with a buddy. It really does help the channel grow and it just means a whole lot to me. But without any further ado, let's go. So firstly, giving credit where it's due, Triple Turret Techno has been around for a while, and it's definitely a build I've wanted to revisit ever since New Horizon came into view, simply due to the fact that, you know, timers is not a thing anymore now, but also because co-op play is much more popular now than it ever was before. But specifically the boys over at Babylon recorded a Triple Turret Techno video a while back, which I encourage you to have a look at, as well as a contributor or a member of my Discord community, Big Dove 18, who's also a YouTube content creator and Outriders streamer over on Twitch. I've included the socials of both of these channels in the description of this video. Definitely go look at their material on the Triple Turret Techno as reference, but also as additional information onto mine. There are some slight differences between my build and between Big Dove's build and between what Babylon have, but that gives you all in all an idea of which mods you should be looking at and, you know, sort of like how the whole thing falls together. I definitely use the material that both of these channels have made on this build as a great reference point for me, and I encourage you to do the same. Now, while this is not a build I would consider doing speed runs with, at least not in the way that I've built it, it does make up for its slower pace with extreme survivability, and you really have to fuck up to die with this build due to the fact that you have a Phoenix-like ability that can bring you back from death at least once every 180 seconds, but also because you are providing so much debuff and crowd control with all of the frozen effects that you're putting out, and also the fact that you're playing triple turrets, so these turrets also pull a certain amount of aggro from the mobs around you. You generally stay out of damage a lot, plus you have so much health coming in from all of the damage that the turrets are pushing out, as well as you yourself with your weapons. Now, the build almost plays like a pet class, because your biggest job, the biggest thing that you should concern yourself with, is essentially making sure that your turrets are up at all times and that they're firing on the enemies, that they're freezing them, that they're debuffing them. And as long as you're doing that, you're getting all of the positive, you know, damage plus from all of the mods that you're stacking with the build, and due to the fact that you're also running Borealis, that you yourself are able to deal a lot of damage to those minions that are being debuffed and that do give you this, you know, massive damage boost against them. Now, there is a slight learning curve here, and that's because turret placement and exactly where you throw them really does make a little bit of difference. But as soon as you start playing this build, you'll start realizing, you know, the throw distance for your turrets, where you should be putting them, how close you should be putting them to each other, and so on and so forth. A very good example that I can make about this is the fact that the cryo turrets have a much longer firing range than your blighted turret. But the blighted turret is quite important due to the fact that it is one of the only ways, unless you count melee as well, that you're able to put toxic onto enemies. And of course you want to be putting toxic onto enemies as well, because that again buffs your damage, and that's another way for you to increase, you know, the overall damage profile of the build. So you kind of have to get used to the fact that, you know, how you space your turrets, that you might need to, for instance, throw your blighted turret out a little bit further, because of course the cryo turrets will start shooting and freezing stuff into place, and then they're not moving closer, so, you know, the blighted turret is not actually getting a chance to put its fire on that. However, this is, you know, it's not going to detract from the fact that the build does very well, and like I said, you do a couple of expeditions with this and you're going to start getting it immediately. More importantly, this is a very unique way of playing Outriders, because none of the other classes have this ability, and this is almost like a very defensive, in a way, methodical way of controlling the battlefield and moving forward, where definitely other classes can be considered much more aggressive and much more jumping all across the battlefield and essentially engaging enemies. And when we get to the actual build itself, let's go ahead and look at skills first. We're using Cryo Turret and Blighted Turret, of course, because it's Triple Turret Techno. And then we're using Fixing Wave, which is just a oh shit button for us, healing us up, and also benefiting from the cooldown reduction, which we stack in this build to a degree, but also because we're going middle tree, so it just kind of fits very well in the build. Fixing Wave is also good because the point is this leans into the co-op side of the build, and so therefore that also works. I did experiment with trying other things like putting Pain Launcher in, and that's certainly an option as well. But I do like the fact that especially once you start leaning into co-op with this build, Fixing Wave really is a star and can help you bail out teammates that are in a little bit of trouble or taking a little bit too much damage. Now you'll notice that Blighted Turret has an extremely low cooldown. That's by default the case. Cryo Turret's cooldown is 14.4 seconds. The bottom line is your cooldowns for your turrets come back in time before the actual turrets themselves expire, unless they're taking a lot of damage, which can actually get them to essentially, you know, get knocked down before you're ready. And this is specifically true for the Cryo Turret, so it is something to look out for. The turrets do get attacked and they do take damage, which reduces their overall health and obviously gets them to despawn once they break. So sometimes you gotta babysit them, especially if it's a biggish enemy. But the good news is the Cryo Turrets freeze enemies, which means that they're standing there still and they can't hit the turrets. So that's a good thing as well. Now when we get over to the actual weapons itself, this uses Funeral Pyre with Shadow Comet and Claymore Turret. This really is one of the GOATs, if not the GOAT weapon at the moment right now, because it's just so good. It's just an all-round amazing damage package that you can have, because of the fact that when you hip fire this, you're able to proc the Shadow Comet and Claymore Torrent effect multiple times from each one of the pellets of a shotgun. And so this pulls down multiples of these onto enemies, and both of those effects on such low cooldowns, Shadow Comet being 3 seconds and Claymore Torrent being 2, that it really is just an amazing weapon, and it really just does very, very well. Now, especially at crowd control. Now, specifically in this package, we feature the Anemoy, and this is the Moaning Winds Radiation Splash reloading mechanic as well. Do you have to use that in this build? No, not at all. Especially due to the fact that you're running Funeral Pyre with Shadow Comet and Claymore Turret, you have other options that you can use in that slot, because this pushes out a lot of damage also in an AoE fashion. But definitely this is so good as well at the moment, and the same arguments that I made for Funeral Pyre being the GOAT and being good can be made for an Anemoy with Radiation Splash and Moaning Winds on. Just by itself, this weapon, by one-time switching, you're doing 1,000,000 damage almost. Now I know that a lot of the viewers of my channel and people that comment on the videos often don't like this reloading mechanic, and that's fine. You don't have to use it, but this will drastically increase the speed that you're able to knock enemies down, especially captains, elites. And so you kind of like, if you're looking for something that's as efficient as you want to build, then this would be definitely the way to go. But like I said, your secondary weapon, you have options there. If you have another weapon, which, I mean, you could put an absolute 0 in here and also help your turrets to freeze things with, you know, whatever you want on there. The sky's the limit here. But definitely I would say Funeral Pyre is kind of like necessary, like, for this build, because again, you are able to push out all this AoE against stuff that's frozen in clusters and frozen together, and it's just silly not to do that. When it comes to the sidearm, I have a Moaning Winds Clip Combustion pistol here, but I do the switching into the Anemoy. I don't even do the switching into Torment and Agony. And the real reason for that is because stuff is dead by then. You don't actually need this additional. So when we get over to the armor itself, this is transmarked, of course, so forget the cannonball pieces. I'm sorry for that. You know, I hope it doesn't hurt your eyes too much. But this is, of course, featuring Borealis 3-piece, and I have the 3-piece on the head, the legs, and the gloves. The reason for these choices is because the mods on these 3 pieces complement the build very well, so it's just a much easier setup. Is it the best way for you to build it if you want the highest firepower or the highest anomaly? No, probably not. Then it would be a good idea to bring the chest in instead of the gloves, because the gloves has max health on. But again, I like the fact that most of the mods which you need are already on these 3 pieces, and so it's a much easier, you know, route to finishing and building the build. Now on the headpiece itself, there's twins on there, which is important because this has the ability for you to have 2 cryo turrets out as once. And this is the crux of Triple Turret Techno, so this is an auto include. Hail shot on here increases the cryo turret's damage of its shots by a certain percentage of your status power. And this is one of the things that was buffed in the patches leading up to New Horizon, and it really makes quite a significant difference. And you are going to be surprised to see the damage that 2 cryo turrets and a blighted turret can do to enemies. it really is quite significant, and a big portion of that damage comes from hail shot. Now we are stacking status on as many pieces as we can, so we don't have it on our weapon, but we do have it on our headpiece, we do have it on our chest, we do have it on our legs, we don't have it on our gloves, and we do have it on our boots. So it's coming from 4 different sources. You can further on make this better if you're able to also use a weapon that has status power on it. That's going to give you another 30%, but for instance, in this case, just having a funeral pyre with the effects that it has is much better than having another 30% of status power. So, you know, your mileage may vary, but that's something to bear in mind. When we get over to the chest piece here now, firstly, let me just deal with one other thing as well, and that is that you'll notice that I'm not really focusing on any specific substat distribution here. I did make a point to try and pick up as much status power as possible, but after that, it's kind of like a hodgepodge mixture of stuff. But definitely, I'm trying to grab cooldown reduction when I can, because that's going to drop my healing wave cooldown down, but it's also going to drive my turrets cooldown down in cases, I'm saying down a lot, in cases where your turrets do, oh here it comes again, down, where your turrets actually get killed and so you have to replace them. But definitely having cooldown reduction on 5 pieces is probably overkill, so that's why it's kind of like a mixture. I've got some pieces with firepower, I've got some pieces with anomaly. So again, it just shows to the true versatility of this build, and that you can essentially glue this together like some Frankenstein, and it really just still does very well. Now I have damage absorber and ice trap on here. These are what I consider my 2 defensive mods. Now the build is super chunky by itself, but damage absorber is that extra additional oomph. You can see you can change that for something else if you find yourself like not dealing with damage at all, like it's really you're just breezing through everything, then it means that you are damage capped and you don't have an issue. Then you can swap damage absorber out for something else. And I definitely would probably consider starting out with damage absorber, learning to play the class a little bit, and then going, okay, you know what, I know the ins and outs of this now, let me swap this to more of an offensive option. We have ice trap on here because it fits into the motif of the build. You do a lot of additional damage to things that are frozen due to the benefit that you get from the Borealis set, but also some of the other mods we're still going to look at. So this is just a great way for you to get out of trouble if for some reason anything makes it through your turrets and actually gets onto you and drops you to within 30% of your HP. This is going to freeze everything in a 10-meter radius, which is very large actually. It's going to freeze stuff down, and that means when they're frozen you can re-damage on them, and you can probably drop that enemy before it presents itself to be a bigger threat. When we get over to the pants, we have euthanizer and freezing boost on here. Now this is where we're starting to, you know, go into the mods which increase our damage profile against stuff that's frozen and stuff that's got toxic on them, and that's basically what this does. Then on the gloves we have shatter and radical therapy. Now these 2 pieces together are essentially our buff sticks, so we're doing a lot more damage as soon as cryo turrets start freezing things, and we're doing a lot more damage as soon as blighted turret starts putting toxic on things. Then when we get over to the boots, I have Captain Hunter on here because killing trash with this build, especially just by using funeral pyre, is no problem whatsoever. Your turrets are also fairly good at killing trash, but with damage to elites, to bosses, to captains, you definitely need a little bit of additional help, or all the additional help that you can get, right? The idea is to kill them as fast as possible before they start getting, you know, irritating with all of their abilities and all that. So this just definitely helps with that. Mr. Fix-It is again leaning more into the co-op side of the build. So again, you by yourself, you're not going to be taking a lot of damage because of the fact that you're always behind your turrets. And again, like I said, you're like essentially this, you know, passive wave that's moving across the battlefield killing everything. But Mr. Fix-It helps you to assist your teammates, because you can use, of course, your healing wave to heal your allies, and you should be using your healing wave to heal your allies. But once you activate this, it gives you and your allies 100% additional armor and 30% resistance. So if you have a Devastator or a Trickster buddy, or any other class for that matter, that's mixing it up in close range with the enemies, by just applying healing wave in this, you can often make them survive, you know, taking 3 or 4 or 5 lethal hits that would have downed them otherwise. So definitely a good inclusion there as well. If you plan to only play this solo, then I think Mr. Fix-It is maybe not necessary at all, and I think it's okay to actually swap it out for something else. Then when we get to the class tree, as I've mentioned, we are going to go middle tree here, and again, Tech Shaman fits this build perfectly well. All of the skills and everything that you're going to be using, they, you know, sort of like feature into this. But we're going to be going down the line here and picking up Exposing Toxin first. because this gives everything that you apply toxic to vulnerable, so that's good. And then marked for execution actually increases the effectiveness of this vulnerability by 40%, so this makes enemies take more damage, and is a really good note to pick up. Then we're just moving along as well. We're also getting wipeout, which says that enemies below 30% HP take 20% more damage. Now, a lot of the times you might hit a cluster of enemies with a funeral pyre, and that's going to drop them down to like almost dead, and then your turrets can just mop up because they're going to be dealing even more damage to those enemies. We are double dipping into the vulnerability status effect here by also picking up exposing frost and marked for execution on that side. So that means if stuff has toxic on, and then it's vulnerable, and if stuff has ice on, then it's vulnerable. So either or, whichever one of the two has it on there, you will always have this vulnerable effect on there. Now, I myself in my community and with some other creators, we've been speculating, we've been messing around with whether these two effects for some reason actually stack onto one another. It's kind of difficult to test because the point is stuff dies so quickly, even at CT15 with this, that it's really difficult to measure damage values. But it is something that I'm looking into at the moment because it feels like it does. And that's just me saying it from, you know, like just experiencing the game and playing it. But it feels like once something has frozen and toxic on it, it feels like this vulnerable effect stacks. And if that's the case, that's probably the reason why this deals as much damage as it does, because it's huge. Once something is frozen and toxic, it dies super quickly in this build. And so if these do stack, and definitely it is something that I'm looking at, so keep eyes out for that. But that would be very interesting. I don't know if it's necessarily supposed to work that way, but yeah, nonetheless. So in any case, then we also get to Doctor of Medicine, which increases all healing by 20% for you and your allies. So that means whichever way you heal. So Technomancer heals from all damage that it deals, so you'll get life from that. If you're running with a Pyromancer, Pyromancers heal from stuff that they've marked with fire and that are burning, so they'll get more life from that. So all in all, this just increases the incoming life gain for you and your team. And this is Doctor of Medicine is probably a big reason as to why this build seems like it's just always running at 80, 90, 95% HP, because you're just, you know, transferring so much of that damage that you're dealing into incoming life. So it's just very, very efficient. Last but not least, we pick up Overclocked. Overclocked is really good because it actually has two very very powerful effects. My mouth just went to sleep there. So the first one is, we're starting from the bottom, of course. The first one is a effect like the Pyromancer has, like Phoenix. So basically for 10 seconds after you lose all your life, you come back to life with 50% of your maximum health, and this can happen every 180 seconds. So it's basically a get out of jail free card for if you die. And then secondly, this, when you activate a gadget skill, now bear in mind Healing Wave is a gadget skill as well as Cryo Turrets is a gadget skill. So when you activate these, you increase the anomaly power and weapon damage of your allies. So no, sorry, I said that wrong. Of you, I wanted to say of your allies and you, but it's just for you. So this increases your anomaly and your weapon damage. My god, if it was allies as well, that would be so cool. Anyway, People Can Fly put this on as well for allies. But in any case, anomaly power and weapon damage by 40 for you is huge, because overall it just increases all of the damage that you push out with your guns and dropping shadow comets and stuff like that and everything, but also from your turrets and the way that they shoot. So that's it for the video. Thank you for watching, especially if you made it this far. Let me know in the comments down below if you've built something similar to this, if you've built it differently, what works for you, what doesn't work for you, what do you like about the class, because it's definitely a different way of playing not only Outriders but also Technomancer. And it's kind of like, you know, it's kind of like a lot of fun. Like, I usually play extremely aggressive builds, and so this is exactly the opposite of that, especially in the way that I've built it here. And it definitely was a change of pace and actually like a little bit of a breath of fresh air in this game, which we all play so very much. But that's it. Thank you so much for watching. As I've mentioned, it's just super important to me that you have a fantastic morning, a great afternoon, and an awesome evening wherever you are in the world. And until next video, fucking cheers.
They want the best of me now, best of me now, best of me now, best of me. They want the best of me now, best of me now, best of me now, best of me.